Imagine finding the perfect dream home, a stunning historic mansion with more rooms than you can count, and the lease. It's practically free. There's just one tiny, peculiar catch. The Miller family thought they'd hit the jackpot when they moved into Blackwood Manor. The terms were simple. They could never leave the property for more than 12 hours at a time. And every single week they had to host a lavish, elaborate dinner party. The guest list that was provided by the house itself. At first, it was like living in a fairy tale. The moment they signed the lease, their bank accounts began to swell. Long-forgotten health problems vanished. The children excelled in their studies. The house seemed to reward their obedience. The weekly dinners were extravagant affairs. The finest ingredients would mysteriously appear in the pantry. The dining room would practically set itself with glistening silver and crystal. The guests were always strangers, quiet and observant, who would eat their fill, nod politely, and leave without a word. The Millers didn't question it. Why would they? They were living a life of unimaginable luxury, but then little things started to go wrong. One evening, the youngest son, Leo, stayed out with friends a little too long. He returned home exactly 12 hours and 5 minutes after he left. The next morning, his favorite playroom, the one at the end of the hall, was gone. Not locked, not boarded up, just gone. A smooth, solid wall stood where the door used to be. The family was unnerved, but they convinced themselves it was a trick of the mind, a strange quirk of the old house. They became stricter, meticulously timing every trip, never daring to push the 12-hour limit again. The house continued to provide for them. The food grew richer, the feasts more decadent. The family themselves grew healthier, stronger, and plumper. They didn't notice it at first, too caught up in the opulence. But then the eldest daughter, Clara, began to dig into the history of Blackwood Manor. She found old town records, diaries from previous residents, all telling a similar story. Families moving in, living lives of impossible fortune, and then simply vanishing. The records always stopped abruptly. One night, during another grand dinner, Clara noticed something horrifying. The portraits of the strange, silent guests lining the dining hall walls. They looked familiar, terribly familiar. They were the families from the old records, the previous tenants, and as she looked closer at the empty seats around their own table, she realized the guest list for tonight was unusually short. In fact, there were no guests at all. The table was set, the feast was ready, but they were alone. That's when the true nature of the lease clicked into place. The house wasn't just providing for them. It was fattening them. They weren't the hosts of the feast, they were the main course. The weekly dinners weren't for the guests who came and went. They were practice. Rehearsals for the final grand banquet and the disappearing rooms. That was the house tidying up, getting rid of anything unnecessary, trimming the fat. A chilling realization dawned on them. They were trapped in a symbiotic relationship with a sentient, malevolent entity. The house fed them, and in return, they would feed the house. They scrambled for the doors, but they were all sealed shut. The 12-hour rule was a lie, a game to keep them docile. The real rule was simple: you never leave. As the clock in the grand hall began to chime, the dining room walls started to slowly, impossibly close in. The scent of the roast on the table was replaced by something else, something ancient and hungry. The Millers weren't tenants in a home. They were livestock in a beautifully decorated abattoir, and the final dinner service was about to begin.